Okay, so this is my reading wrap up or whatever for 2025, and this is not going to be a long video. Trust me, well, it shouldn't, unless I just get to run in my mouth about these books, because there are only 2 books that I read. Now, I may have read more than 2, but I'm just going to put it this way: there's only 2 that I actually remember. So what I'm going to do is review the last 2 books that I read. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to discuss is, you guessed it, The Tenant by Freida McFadden. Anybody who knows me, who's watched my videos, knows that Freida McFadden is my absolute favorite author. I don't know if it's going to remain that way, but so far, she's my favorite. I've read several of her books. I've read most of them. I'll probably say I've read all the ones that I'm actually interested in. There's a couple of them that just don't sound good to me that I'm probably never going to read. But for the most part, I've read pretty much all of her books. So, of course, when The Tenant came out, you know I had to go pick up that one. I've kind of been out of the loop. I'm a mood reader, and I just wasn't in the mood to read. But I'm back in the mood now, FYI. So, The Tenant by Freida McFadden. I don't know if I've said this before again, but there's certain themes that I like about books, and one of them is tenants, roommates, people living in apartment buildings, that sort of thing. So even if this wasn't Freida McFadden, I probably would have read this book anyway. Now, I read this book when it very first came out, which was probably a couple of months ago. I really, like I said, I don't even remember. So I might miss a few points or whatever. I'm not probably going to get the names right, and I might not even get the whole story right, but I know enough about it to be able to give it a review. Okay, so of course this is a thriller, and of course I read it for $0 because it's on Kindle Unlimited, for those of you who didn't know. And technically Kindle Unlimited is not $0, but I pay a fee that I don't even remember being taken out of my account every month. And so when it says Kindle 0.00 on there, I'm like, oh, it's a free book, but really it's not. You're kind of like just borrowing a book on your Kindle. But anyway, that's beside the whole point. So here's the characters, and like I said, it's been a while, so I'm going to be reading them off a piece of paper because I don't remember their names. There's Blake Porter. He's like a VP of marketing. There's Krista Marshall, who is his, I believe, fiance or girlfriend. Whatever it is, they live together. Wayne is his boss. Stacy is the assistant at his job. There's Quill Elizabeth. These are just like main characters. There's more characters than what I'm saying. And she was just like some weird lady that I'll talk about her a little bit later. There's Whitney Cross, who is actually the tenant. And then there's Mr. Zimmerly, who is the wacky neighbor or whatever next door. I won't even say he's wacky. I'll say he's very mean all the time. Kind of nosy, getting in people's business, annoying, that kind of neighbor. So I don't remember exactly what happened, but whatever happened, Blake lost his job. And so him and Krista, live in a place that they can't really afford. And so they're scraping around, they can't make ends meet. And Krista, she works like at a dry cleaners or something like that. So she wasn't the breadwinner or anything like that. So they're really like struggling financially. So they come up with the bright idea to get a tenant to live. They have an extra room upstairs, like on the 3rd floor or whatever, or 2nd floor or whatever. And they're gonna get somebody to rent that room out to help make ends meet. So they end up, interviewing a lot of people. And I just brought up this lady, Quill Elizabeth, because she was really weird. And she came over, to meet them, whatever, because she was interested in the room. And she said, she started like freaking out and everything. And she said that she was like a fortune teller. And she said that she can like see a vision or whatever of Blake killing Krista. And so that's like a key piece of the book, but it's not anything that's going to be like real obvious. So anyway, it was her, some other people, some other weird people came or whatever, and they didn't like any of them. So finally, Whitney, it's a shame I have to look at notes to remember their name. Whitney came, and they really liked her. She was cool and everything, young, nice and everything. She worked at like some diner or something that they go to, I think, sometimes or whatever. And they ended up really liking her, and they ended up giving her the room. So things start happening, like just finding moldy food, a whole bunch of fruit flies around, and like more than just like an average person, whatever, like hundreds of them. She used up all of Blake's shower gel or something like that. They suspect, like when she was doing the laundry, that she Blake was like highly allergic to something called limonene or something like that. That's in a lot of laundry detergents. So he had to use like baby laundry detergent or something. And ever since she came there, he started itching and getting a rash and everything as if the limonene was in his laundry. Just all this weird stuff started happening, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, the time when all his shower gel got used up, he ended up confronting Whitney. He actually went to her job, which was, to me, very wrong. He could have just waited and did it when she got home. But anyway, and so from that point on, they they did not like each other at all. And so, of course, when he was finding the moldy food or whatever, he was suspecting that Whitney is the one that planted the moldy food there on purpose, and just all this kind of stuff's going on, all this back and forth, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, he wants to find out more about her or whatever, and he ends up looking her up and calls her old high school, just and all this stuff, and he ends up finding, some secrets that happened in the past or whatever. And I don't really, for the most part, I usually don't do spoilers on my channel, so I'm not gonna go into what the plot twist was, whatever. But I'll just say also another thing that happened. This is, if you read on Goodreads, people are going to mention Goldie a lot. And Goldie was their goldfish. And Goldie is like a key character in the book. And a lot of people say that Goldie is actually their favorite character. But that's just like them being like, trying to be funny or whatever because they didn't like this book. My thoughts and my actual rating on this book. I liked it. To me, it wasn't Freida McFadden's best book. But it was okay. I never did a review on it or anything, but I read The Crash too, and this was way better than The Crash, so it's not like Freida McFadden is tanking in her writing or anything. This just wasn't my favorite, and I expected more out of it because it was like a Tenant situation, which I said that I love. To me, the plot twist just wasn't that great, and it's actually a little bit predictable. But besides that, it was interesting. I would say it was a page turner because I really wanted to know because it's kind of just like a lot of back and forth between Blake and Whitney, like the whole time. I was like, okay, something's really, got to happen or something to make this book so great or whatever. And I kind of was underwhelmed at the end, but it really, it is what it is. Everybody can't write a 5-star book every time, in my opinion. And so this just is not my favorite of Freida's, but I'm not going to stop reading her books or whatever. And I still say she's probably my favorite author at this time. So that was The Tenant by Freida McFadden. It's a short read, an easy read, whatever, so I still highly recommend that you check it out. And a lot of people saying it's their favorite book and giving it 5 stars or whatever. So, just do what you think is best. But like I said, to me, it's not her best. Okay, so the next book that I read, and I read this one pretty recently, it's called The Roommate by Kirsten Modglin, and that's how I pronounce her name. I don't know if that's right or whatever. It's Modglin or something like that. This is a brand new author for me. People have told me that they think I'll really like her writing, and based upon this book, I'm definitely going to check out more of her books. This book is not real new. I think it's probably like about 4 or 5 years old, so a lot of you probably have read it already. It was new to me, and it just looked interesting. Again, remember I just said I read The Tenant, now The Roommate, so you guys can kind of see what I like. So if you guys recommend books to me, if anything's called, about a roommate or something like that, recommend that to me definitely, because I'll probably check it out if it's short enough. This book, speaking of short, I think it was only 200 something pages. If it was more than that, it was like literally probably just 300 or 320 or something like that. It wasn't very long at all, which is great because I do not like long books, and long to me is probably 350 or more. Let's see, the characters in this book, I got to read the character too. I'm just not good at remembering names, and it's not really important, I guess, but I just kind of like to say them when I'm talking about it. So there's Wes, who was the main character, Addie, who was his wife, Rory, who was their teenage daughter, and Elias, who ended up going to be the roommate. There's also a couple of other people. I'd probably say out of all the other people, the next main character after the ones that I mentioned is Garth, who is Elias's friend. I said Elias is going to be the roommate. Actually, it's Elias's apartment that Wes, the main character, is going to move into. So Wes and Addie, their marriage is struggling and so bad. He's like, not really like cheating or anything like that, but he just like doesn't have time for his family. Like he misses all his daughter's soccer games, and they don't spend time together. They don't go out on dates anymore. He's never home. He's always working. He's really into his job. And so the wife, Addie, she's like, I need some space or whatever, and basically kicked him out. So he'd been living in a motel. And so one day he ran out of toiletries or whatever, and he went down to the store, and he ran into this guy who later found out was Elias. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. It's Elias. And Wes didn't even recognize him, but Elias was talking to him as if he knew him. He knew his name and everything. He knew who his wife was and all this kind of stuff. And he just could not remember who he was. So they were talking and everything. I think they might have exchanged numbers. Anyway, he was talking. Wes was one day talking to Addie, his wife, and he brought this guy up or something, Elias Munn. And she actually remembered who he was. And so, he was like a really geeky guy, skinny, kind of weird and everything, kind of, whatever. And so anyway, if I'm telling the story correctly, Wes ends up running into him. No, they met for beers at a bar. They ended up exchanging information. They met for beers at a bar. And they got to talking. Wes kind of poured out his little story or whatever. And Elias is like, hey, you ain't got to keep staying in a motel or whatever. You can come stay with me. I got an extra room. And he's like, all right, bet. So he ended up moving in with him, and just, like I said, Elias is very weird. He's weird looking. He's geeky. He doesn't have any friends. He actually looks way younger than what he is. I think Wes and Addie and all them are in their mid-30s maybe, and he probably looks like a teenager. And he's just strange. And so things like, for example, he would just bust into Wes's bedroom without knocking. That a lot. He talk about weird stuff. He would say things like, Wes brought up that he had a daughter. Then a couple days later, when they're talking about it, he brings up his daughter. Elias is like, oh, you have a daughter? Who's Rory or whatever? He's like, my daughter, I told you. And he's like, oh, you have a daughter? Just like things like that. He also they ate meat together, for dinner or whatever, like a meat lover's pizza. And then a couple days later or whatever, Elias is like, no, I haven't ate meat since I was a kid or whatever. I'm a vegetarian. Just weird things like that. He was weird. He always ate like Twizzlers and Swedish fish and stuff, and there'd be like red stuff all in his teeth or whatever. And the way this author Kirsten describes things, I really like the way she goes into really good detail, and you can just like really be in the moment and really understand, like you're actually there. Kind of like it's actually like you're watching a movie almost. I think she does a really good job of that without going too far and making it so the descriptions and everything where you start getting bored. But anyway, so, just weird stuff starts happening and everything. And like Elias shows up at Wes's job and saves the day. And just all this kind of crazy stuff starts happening. Anyway, there's one major event that happens. This is where Garth comes in, who's Elias's friend. He actually owns the building that they live in. So Wes is an agent, like a booking agent or something for celebrities. And he's going to have this big party. Anyway, the venue that he had, fell through or whatever. And so he had to find another place. And it just so happened that Garth, who owned the building, who was Elias's friend, said you can use downstairs areas like a ballroom or something like that. So they clean it all up and use it. And there's a major event that happens during that time. And that's where the plot and everything kind of takes the twist or whatever. I'm not, like I said, I don't do spoilers, so I'm not going to say what happens, whatever. But all I can say is I highly recommend this book. This actually is probably one of my favorite books that ever. It's high up there on the list, probably in the top 5, maybe even, which is saying a lot for me to even put a book that high. I don't know if I give it 5-star rating. I probably give it 4 stars though. It was like really, really good. So there is like a major plot twist in the end, but I'll say I wasn't as underwhelmed as I was with The Tenant by Freida McFadden, but I was a little underwhelmed in the end. And I know you guys are probably saying, why did you give it 4 stars? And you're saying you highly recommend that you all read it. And it's because getting up to that point was so good and so interesting. I still love the book. I was just like, that's what it is, or something like that. But there was a plot. It definitely was a plot twist, but I was just expecting something a little bit more. But I have no regrets about reading this book. And based off of this book, I'm definitely going to read more by Kirsten. Definitely. I looked at some of the other titles of the books and stuff, and they look really interesting and right in the area of what I like to read. So I can't wait to check out more of her stuff. But anyway, so none of these books were a waste of time. There were a couple little things that were underwhelming at the end or whatever, but still, pretty solid books. So yeah, that's my little review. Like I said, it wasn't going to be long, so I only have 2 books to talk about. I am currently reading something else right now, and it is so good. I can't wait to talk about this one. I can't wait to hear if you guys have read this one, but I'm not going to say what it is just yet. I'll probably do it in the next video, but it is so good. It's like nothing that I ever read before. So I can't wait, and I hope it doesn't underwhelm me at the end either. But anyway, again, like I always say, if you like this video, thumbs up. If you've read either of these books, comment and let me know what your thoughts are about them. I saw it. Both of them got very mixed reviews, like on Goodreads and stuff. But like I said, I just read that just to kind of see what people are saying, but I don't really go by that when I choose a book. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, also notifications, so you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. I have a whole list of books that I said I was going to read this summer, but then as I was just looking like on Amazon and stuff, and some more stuff popped up, so I might intermingle some stuff in there. And also, if you have any recommendations for me, in particular on this video, I want you to recommend some good books about some tenants or some roommates or something like that, because I'm really into that. So yeah, just let me know and drop that in the comments. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.